Listen, I know as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of things that we have to master in a way. And one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning was definitely my copywriting. Now, I know that shocks a lot of my clients today because they know it only takes me a little bit of time to write a newsletter or whip up a blog post or record an introduction just like this. But copywriting is a skill set that is unavoidable as an entrepreneur. And the better that you are at your copywriting, the more that you practice it, the more that you fine tune that, hey, the quicker you are going to master that process and the better you are going to have when it comes to your conversions and the ease of actually creating that copy. And because I know that this is something that my clients come to me a lot with issues around or even a lack of confidence around, I knew I wanted to bring on my new friend, Elise Hodge. Elise recently had me on her podcast to talk all about digital storytelling, which we know I love, and we hit it off instantly. I love Elise's very laid back approach to copywriting, as well as her sustainable business model, which you're going to hear more about on today's episode. Elise is a funnel strategist and a conversion copywriter. She helps coaches and course creators just like you make daily sales on autopilot. She does this by helping you build simple, high converting funnels, really taking into consideration the power of copywriting. As you're going to hear in today's episode, Elise and I have a lot in common. We actually started our businesses right around the same time. We are both mothers and we have a very deep desire to simplify the process of running our businesses, which is why I knew she would be perfect here for the Authentic Brand Builders podcast. Inside today's episode, we are going to talk about your email funnel. We are going to talk about how to build confidence with your copywriting. We are going to talk about some of the fundamentals of stellar copywriting. And as always, you are going to hear another authentic story from a fellow entrepreneur that is here to inspire you on your journey. So today's episode is a good one, my friends. Let's get into some of the top strategies around copywriting.
This is the Authentic Brand Builders podcast with Michelle Knight.
Elise, I'm so excited to have you on the Authentic Brand Builders podcast. Thank you for joining me today. It's early morning for you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here.
I met you through our Mixer Mind, and then I had the privilege to be interviewed on your podcast where we nerded about brand storytelling. And I'm excited for our listeners to hear a little bit more about your story and your specialty, which of course is copywriting. So can you kick it off by just sharing a bit about your brand story and what ultimately led you to having the business you have today?
Of course. Okay, this is a long story, so I'll try and give you the Cliff Notes version. When I started in the online space in about 2016, 17, my foray into it all was actually with blogging and with growing an Instagram account, which was a thing back then. Maybe it still is now, but really like creating community around the blog and around that sort of thing. The first thing I ever sold was actually a course, which is really interesting. And it was about growing on Instagram. Do not come to me for Instagram tips now though. But it was, it was that sort of like time of, people are asking you about something, then, teach about that thing. So it was sort of like a natural next step for me at the time. And, moved into my I guess, educational background is PR, and I studied journalism and business, as I think a lot of people do who are online marketers now. So I was working in corporate PR, running sort of like blog, Instagram thingy on the side, moved into copywriting because that made natural sense for me as like I guess a solid offer. So 2017 and onwards was doing sort of created, like I really tested this idea of can I get paid to write? Popped some notices in like Facebook groups and offered some really wild, cheap deals on like, I can write your bio for $50. And I was like, oh, people are paying me via PayPal. This is awesome. So, it was like, I have a skill and I am going to try and get paid for it. I remember very distinctly, actually, my husband and I were going on a trip to Europe we had planned, and I was like, I need some more money for the trip. So I was just like putting myself out there and really like pitching. And I didn't really, I worked in PR, but I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of this business sense. It was just putting feelers out there. Things were working, and it was a gradual process from there. I moved into doing website copy. It's where I really solidified my services for a long time. Web copy, sort of have always sold digital products, I guess, on the side as well, and like courses as a part of that. As time went on, launch copy, sales copy, really moved into that area, which I'd say is more my expertise these days. And yeah, then after I had my first baby, 2021, changed everything. So I was like, how do I do this business thing? I kept working with clients, but also brought in some kind of strategy side of things as well. So like launch strategy, done with you kinds of work, as well as the, done for you copy. And have since, I guess, after having my second son in 2023, really moved more the coaching and digital course and product space for, I guess, copybooks, email templates, launch like sales page templates, launch
Mhm.
copy stuff as well. So at the moment, I'm not working one-on-one with clients, but I'm more in that coaching capacity inside my programs, helping people with their funnels, their messaging, and selling sort of those entry-level, I guess, launch related and funnel related copy products to help people be able to get their funnel set up and write the words they need to write to convert students and clients.
I did not realize how similar our background
Ah,
was. I don't think we talked about this on your podcast, but
no,
I also started in 2016, and, my background is also in PR, and
there
I
you
worked
go.
for a PR firm, but it makes sense, and I the one of the things I love about your story, and I love hearing from other people, and to encourage my listeners, is that you could pivot so many times. Like you said, you started with Instagram, and you're like, "Do not ask me about Instagram today because Instagram
Mhm.
changes." And I think it's such a key takeaway. Do you find that you tend to, obviously, you've owned the copywriting space, but do you find that you tend to pivot your offers based on like what's in high demand in the market?
That's a great question. Yes, in a way, yes, but also it's like twofold for me. I think especially after having kids, especially after having my second, it was a bigger realization actually because it was like, whoa, we need to be more organized, and there's just a lot. But it's twofold. It's like what are people looking for in the market, but also for me, I really had this big moment in 2023 coming into 2024 of just going, what is going to work for my lifestyle right now with toddlers? Like, I mean, I don't have 10-year-olds, I don't have school age kids. I literally have toddlers and like part-time childcare. And like, how are we going to adapt the business for my lifestyle? But then also, of course, listening in, paying attention to the market. What are people wanting? What are they needing? And that's shifting. So there is this element of, pivoting for lifestyle purposes, I think has been a big part of my story. And it can feel like, I'm about to have my third baby in 3.5 years. Like I'm crazy like that. So I do anticipate even more shifts this year. But, I feel like I made the most important shifts after my second. But there is that element of pivoting out of necessity for your own lifestyle. And then, of course, making sure that things are what the market wants, what they need. So you're always pivoting. I mean, I enjoy it. So
Yeah. One of my friends calls me the queen of the pivot
yeah,
because I think I like that process. Maybe it's from being in PR and having to like react to situations, as they were coming up. But I think it's such an important lesson
yeah,
that we share with entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs, that like I always say, you're never going to have it 100% figured out.
hmm,
Life, especially adding children and changing the dynamic, I think that's one of our greatest assets as entrepreneurs. If we can change the business to fit our lifestyle, and I feel like when you don't do that, that's when you
yeah,
find yourself in burnout,
uh huh,
ultimately.
yeah,
Yeah. Copywriting is such an interesting topic because I work with so many clients in the branding space and the storytelling space that they're like, copywriting just is so hard. It stresses me out. What do you love about the process?
Oh, okay. I love those end moments where people go, or say, I've written this for clients and clients give me this feedback, or I write it for myself and people go, it's like you're inside my head. Like, there's nothing more satisfying. And I think we lose that. We've lost that a lot with that introduction of AI, and AI is not bad, but we've lost that a lot. And even it's something I have to remind myself of. What I love is that with copy, you have this opportunity to connect instantly with people in a really surprising way, in a non-generic way. Of course, it can be generic. Most of the stuff out there is, but we have this opportunity to really meet people where they are at if we take the time and the attention to detail, which again I'm going to say, like, especially after having a couple of kids, it's easy for me, even myself, as someone who knows this, who teaches this, who's done this so in depth for clients, to cut shortcuts for myself. So I'll be very open and transparent there. But it's so powerful when you do take the time to pay attention to what people are saying and to incorporate all of that in your copy. Like, that's what I love about it, being able to connect like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a sweet spot. I looked at your website, I was looking at your social media and stuff, and a huge thing for you really is about building community, and that's what we are about here as well at Brand Mary. And this is something that I remember being such an aha for me in the beginning when I started running Facebook ads. Is someone commented and said, "It's like you're in my head."
Mm.
Like that sweet spot of copywriting where you know your ideal customer and they're just like, "Did you read my journal last night? Like, how do you know this about me?" And so I always encourage my clients, do the market research. But do you have, any sort of tips to really kind of tap into what is in your ideal customer's head and integrate that into your copy?
Good question. Okay, there are like so many ways you can do this. And I think we've spoken about this too. I mean, surveys, biggest, easiest one. Yeah, there's so many so many different methods. Like, you can be listening literally all the time, comments, paying attention. There's so many places you can find it on. What people are thinking on. I mean, a great place is like looking at competitors or looking at even YouTube. YouTube videos are really
Mhm.
interesting. Comments there, Reddit's, like, there are so many places you can start to do that basic research to see what people are saying. But if you're thinking of your own specific audience, I love running a survey, and I always love like incentivizing the survey as well, with some like, why should I actually do this? Because no one wants to fill out a survey. So I actually don't position it as a survey. I would position it more as a giveaway, and you have the opportunity to win something by completing this thing. One of my students, she was like, I'm going to give it, like, she really wanted a ton of research. I think she did like $500 PayPal cash. Like, yeah,
Ooh, that's a good one.
it was. No, and she had like 60 plus responses, and they were really in depth. It was incredible. Everyone was like, "What?" I mean, she obviously had the budget to do that, but I mean, that makes it a no-brainer for me to tell you all the things, and I want to have the very like best answers I can have. So I mean, you do not need to do that at all. It could be even giving someone access to maybe a course or a digital product of
I've
yours,
done
like
that
that.
one.
That probably is the most simple and straightforward way. It's also going to then be aligned with making sure you're attracting the right people who are actually a good fit, because they want that particular thing. So it sort of lines up. It could even be that the thing you're wanting to say I have an email marketing membership, right? So say the thing that I'm wanting to do is gather information about email marketing. So then I say, okay, I'm going to give you an annual access to one person who completes this survey, and then I'm going to get people who actually are interested in email marketing. So that's a thought too.
Mm.
Um, but
Mhm.
asking surveys as an initial step is great. Doing all of that sort of looking around, competitive research, seeing what people are leaving in comments, like kind of just becoming a little bit of a detective. And then there is no substitute for actually talking to someone. So I do recognize that sometimes there are limitations around that. I think especially with people who are listening who are moms, they have little kids, like, I literally can't get on a call. Like, yeah, I get it. That's definitely me too a lot of times as well. But, whether it is a call, whether it is voice noting, whether it is, maybe even Loom videos, but a way to be able to connect with some people more. And, from a technical aspect, something I love to do when I run surveys or get my students to run surveys is that we have a button that actually asks people, hey, if would you be willing to hop on a 15-minute, Zoom
Mm.
call to talk about this further? Hey, I'd love, like, if so, I'd love to gift you a $10, Starbucks voucher, or I don't know, whatever. You could incentivize it again. Sometimes you don't need to incentivize it, because there'll be people who are just genuinely willing to connect with you and also interested. You could always frame that also as almost like a audit. You could frame it as like feedback, and I'll make sure I give you like 3 next steps for email marketing, if we can have a chat about, your email marketing.
Yeah.
So that's fun too. And again, you don't have to just put it out in the survey. You can just go straight to your audience and also open up your calendar for some calls and position things as an audit. So long story short, there are lots of ways to gather data, and obviously lots of good questions you can ask too.
I love all those examples because a lot of our listeners are just getting started. And so one of the things I always recommend too, if you have a little phone anxiety, like I do, or like meeting anxiety for the first time. Is like, if you have clients, I think one of the easiest things to do is to listen to those
Yes,
clients,
yes,
know,
yes.
and just like it's amazing what my clients will give me or in my membership or whatever if I just pay attention to what they're saying and not like, oh, that was a great call. Like, let me dissect that a little bit. But I love what you shared. If you don't have an audience or if it's small, of really getting that juicy information via the open question surveys. Let me add that.
Yes.
And then that bonus 15-minute call is a great way to do that. And I think honestly, when people come to me and they're saying, I'm struggling with copywriting, I'm struggling with content ideas, I'm always like, okay, well, have you asked your audience? Have you checked in with your audience? Do you know what your audience is struggling with? Because that's, as a content creator, that's the foundation of how we get our
Yes,
content topics.
exactly. And then you'll never run out of ideas for content again.
Right. Just and you'll be a better copywriter,
Yep,
as you mentioned.
yep.
Like I said, a lot of people in my space feel really overwhelmed with copywriting. I mean, yours too, because they come to you and being like, I don't want to do this. And I think there's obviously it's a heavy topic. There
Mhm.
are a lot of different types of copy that we have to write. You mentioned launch copy, email copy, which you specialize in. Do you have any hacks or anything you do with your clients to boost confidence around copywriting or in your membership?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you have any more like specific questions from that? I'm just trying to think. All right.
Yeah. So, if someone is like coming to you and they're like, I've done my market
Mhm.
research, I feel like I've written something, it just doesn't feel good enough. Maybe they're in a bit of a comparison spiral, as we all
Mhm.
can fall into. They've looked at other people's
Yeah.
landing pages, they've subscribed to as many email sequences as possible and read everybody else's work. I think for me and what I've noticed is it's really understanding your voice. So maybe that's the actual question, is like, how do you support your clients in discovering their authentic voice in the process of copywriting?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you're wanting to get something out on the page, and sometimes it's just getting started, and that's not going to be the end product. It's not going to be, reflective of your brand voice. So like, what do you want to say? Let's try and say that. It depends what you're writing. So, you could follow like a, sort of copywriting formula or whatnot, depending on what you're writing, but getting some different ideas out there on the page. And if you want to, like, I'm not against AI. I think it's super helpful. You could ask AI to help you to get some initial things out there. Now, there are lots of different ways we can do this, but something I love, and this will probably resonate with you, Michelle, is to actually make like a sort of brand voice guide for yourself. It could be as simple, if you're just starting, it can be as simple as, what are the words that I say, what are the words I don't say. And I think that's one of the most important things you can have, because then if you do want to use tools like AI, you can feed that in there as well, so that you're not going to get generic language. And you can also notice, oh, I wouldn't say that word, okay, add it to your bank. Like, I think of like a word bank, so you're able to have this word bank of, yeah, I use these words. So even something as simple as, how do you greet someone? You're like, hey,
Mhm.
how are you? Or you say hi. Do you use the word, like one of my clients would say like, hey babe, but like for me, I even say it, I'm like, ugh. Like I would never say that. But it's just important to know how you would naturally talk, what feels authentic to you, and make a note of that. This is not something that you need to have this huge exhaustive list straight away. It's just something that you could tap into and develop over time. And then like words you don't use, so it's like, words I don't use. I don't use this. I would never say this. I would never say that. I would never say, I don't know, transform. I would never say, you can think of even
Mm.
typical words that may come up with AI.
Delve.
Delve,
They
yeah.
they love delve.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you do that. I mean, I find that hard sometimes, like, "No, but that's my word." Whatever it is,
It's
right?
definitely not mine.
Yeah, it's not mine either, but, paying attention to this thing, and you can sort of build it out over time. That's just one way. There are so many different ways, but I think if you do have that on hand, that can be really simple, uh, in terms of refining your content, then to actually be able to look at it and be like, would I use that word? Would I not use that word? Does that sound true to me? Even writing down, like, I mean, you're the expert at all of this sort of brand storytelling stuff. I, have talked about it a lot in the past, but this really is your sort of world. But I will say, like, even writing down different stories and different analogies, just all these fun tidbits. And if you have them in a document that you can use, that you can then go back to your copy and refine through that angle, or again, ask our helpful, friendly AI chatbot to help us with it, then you're going to get a better outcome there with your copy as well, by making sure you know what is true to you. and it doesn't
Mm.
sound generic.
I love what you said too at the beginning about like we start with kind of like a rough draft and it's not the final. And I think a lot of people get really
Yeah.
overwhelmed with that initial process. But the biggest thing that I've discovered, and I'm sure you have as well when it comes to content creation, finding my voice, just all of it is like repetition really is key. And it's been through the repetition that I have refined my process as a copywriter. And so even just that tidbit of like, it's gonna be a rough draft, I
Yes.
think is everything in the copywriting process.
Yep. And when I used to, I mean, I don't work with one-on-one clients a lot, at the moment. Never say never. That I'm sure I'll do it again in the future. But like when I work with one-on-one clients, that's the biggest thing as a copywriter. You're like, I mean, no one's looking at it yet. They're not looking at it yet. You just have to get something out on the page. And
Mhm.
it's different when you're doing it for someone else and you've got a time limit. It's like you need to get it out, and sometimes it just sucks. And then you go through and you refine it through different lenses. You're refining it through the lens of like the voice of customer data, what people are actually saying, and you're checking like, did they actually say that? Is that true? Is that the most common, I guess, pain point, or is that the deepest pain point? Is that what's really top of mind for them? So you're asking that, and then I would say, for me anyway, I would look later at those sort of brand voice pieces, and is this true to your voice? So it's just that process: refine until you get to the gold.
Just just like everything in business, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was one of the reasons too that this is a topic that comes up time and time again. I ask my academy members, like, what do you want to hear more of? Copywriting, copywriting,
Yeah.
copywriting. And so I love that we're hearing from a copywriter to tell you that like it is a process
Uh-huh.
for
For
everyone.
everyone,
No one gets it right.
including copywriters. It's like, for us, it's like the pressure of, we got to get this right for the client, but you comes through refinements. Yeah. So everyone has to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned launch copy, obviously, but the one copy that you also mentioned that I'd love to kind of tap into a little bit more is email
Yes.
marketing and funnels. I know you have a fantastic welcome email template
Yes.
for our listeners, which we will link in the description over on the blog, on YouTube, all of the places. What are you seeing working? And I know we're only like 2 months into 2025, but we move fast here in the entrepreneur space. But what are you seeing working really well when it comes to email copywriting and maybe funnels specifically?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, we're all hearing this, and maybe for your listeners, this may be more new, but is this concept of having more personal touch points. But for me, I'm asking myself, like, how do I do this in a scalable way? Because, like, I can't, be on calls with people all the time. So it's like, how can, even in our, I mean, obviously we may have like more live emails. So I would say they're like the email newsletters or the emails you send throughout the week. But then you might have your automated email sequences. Perhaps it's a sales sequence or a nurture sequence that's set up and just sort of delivers, automatically. So I'm asking myself, like, where can I infuse more touch points? And I think there's just so many fascinating things that lots of people are doing. So I'm always like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, just learning and thinking and testing with my own audience. So, I mean, I feel like it's hard to give you like this is the thing. But first of all, being yourself in your emails is really important. This is like a thing that I've said for all of time. Like, this is a thing that everyone will say forever. You don't need to be professional or stuffy. Like, literally write like you speak. When you
Mm.
start to do that a little more, people start to go, oh, I really like it. It's really interesting to read your emails. It's fun to read your emails. And I know sometimes we can, again, it's like that refinement. You might want to get something out quickly, but just like pause, and where can I include an analogy here? Is there a storytelling angle that's actually relevant? Is there a fun fact in here? Just things that make it more human. When you are talking to someone, we don't talk like rigid robots, sharing our 3 tips for this and this. Like, we have maybe, oh, that reminds me of this, and oh yeah, you're holding a coffee, and like, who are you as that full person? So thinking of integrating that into your emails, not being afraid to include like random talking points or asking questions that aren't even business related. Like, of course you're going to ask the business related ones, but the other week, I don't even know. It was relevant to the email in some way, but I talked about Formula One and how I'm obsessed with Formula One.
Same.
Obsessed with Formula One. Ferrari's my team. Charles Leclerc.
Nice. We're McLaren.
So I talked about Formula One, and it was literally, that is such a good real time example. And I had a few people reply. I mean, I have like an email list of 8,000. I mean, I had a bunch of people reply and be like, oh my gosh, yes, Ferrari, yes. And then we had this whole chat about how unfair is it that Carlos Sainz is there, and what do you think about Lewis Hamilton? Anyway, it was just obviously it's not going to resonate with most people, but it's just these little touch points that create a connection with you and with someone who's reading your email. And sometimes those are, personality facts, they're lighthearted like that. And other times they are more directly about, hey, email marketing, or, asking a question about that. I think I use Kit, so formerly ConvertKit. I hate having to always
Yes.
say that. Like, anyway, couldn't we just, anyway.
That's a whole nother
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
I use them as well.
Yeah, yes. So polls is a relatively new thing, and I'm testing polls out in my emails. Although I think people are not. So the first time I did this, I didn't get many responses because I'm like, people aren't used to voting on a poll in an email. So now I'm like, you can click this button. So just thinking of different ways to engage people. Obviously Loom videos is great. Actually, I do like that in my emails. So say if I have this like automated sales sequence, and I have one email that talks about mistakes, but instead of the whole email being, written, I actually filmed a video, and
Mhm.
that gets a lot of click-throughs, where I actually just I think it's like 4 minutes, go over these 3 mistakes with email marketing. And I have that point where you're hearing my voice, just seeing me, as opposed to just getting the emails. The other day I did something really unscalable, and the timing was poor because I ended up in hospital that afternoon. Everything's fine, don't
Oh,
worry about me. But I was like, the timing is poor because then it was unscalable. But usually the
uh-huh.
timing wouldn't happen. It was a random thing we needed to check on because I'm pregnant, but it was all good in the end. But so what I did, long dramatic story short, is I put in, like, I did some tips, right? I just wanted to drop a ton of value. I felt like, you know what, really I'm feeling this need to just show value to my audience, really connect with them deeper, and do something that is going to wow them. I really wanted to do that because, I mean, honestly, I want to say it was super strategic. Like, I've got this launch coming up soon, and I think it would be good in that strategic sense. But it was more
Mhm.
just an opportunity to connect with them, and I had the time. So I shared these email marketing tips, and then I said, hey, I've also got this bonus tip for you. I said something like 99% of people are not doing this, or like most people aren't doing this. Let's say, if I want to be more accurate, most people are not doing this tip, but it really can be a game changer for you when it comes to your email marketing. So I asked them to hit reply with a particular word. And then, I was going to reply to
Yeah.
everyone. And then I didn't anticipate how many replies I would get. And then I landed in hospital that afternoon, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that'll have to wait till next week. But that was really, people were blown away. Now, I would do things differently next time. So don't take this as advice of what to do. Next time I would do a time limit around it. I know people do Q&As, things like this. Time limit is important because
Mhm.
I had people replying for like 5 days. And I was like, oh, I can't keep up with this. But I don't regret it. It was just like, it was a fun test. So what I did is, instead of just being one bonus tip, because it wasn't something that like my VA could just reply to them, I'd
Mm.
created an email template. So I was like, this is cool. They're going to apply for a tip and they're going to get a template. So I created this email template. And then what I did for every single person whose like website I could see on their URL, I actually filmed them a Loom video. And I said, this is exactly how you can customize this template to your offers and your audience. And then I even used
Wow.
ChatGPT, and it took a bit of time. And I asked ChatGPT to help me come up with different angles for them for messaging as well. So I probably ended up doing at least a Loom video for 20 people, and then it was probably 70 people who replied. So the others were more like, I couldn't see their website. So I just gave them the template, but
Mhm.
I did say in there, like, hey, if you want to reply and tell me a bit about what you do, I'm happy to give you some tips on how to customize this. And then I had some more people reply from that. And hopefully those replies will stop now because that was, but in saying that, like, yeah, I'm not recommending that as a thing to do, but I think it was an interesting test and I wanted to engage my audience more. And what I would do differently is I would just say, like, if you reply in the next 3 hours, then I will do this.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
the next 20 people who reply. That's how I would create some boundary around it. I was a bit like, whoa, this is fun. And then I was like, ah, crap. But yeah,
But sometimes you never know, you know what I
I
mean?
didn't
You never
know.
know if anyone's gonna even take advantage of it because it does feel like crickets when you're doing email
Yeah.
marketing. I was sending out an email and sometimes I'm like, "That was amazing," and then there's, like, nothing,
Yes.
but then I also remember going back to what you said, like, if you don't ask for the engagement, it's probably not going to
Yeah. Yeah.
happen, and so, like, I love what you shared about the polls. We've been using those as well. They give me great content ideas. I'll actually ask my audience, like, thinking about
Yes.
doing a video on these three things, which one would be more timely for you, you know? But I think one of the most underrated strategies for entrepreneurs is going the extra step,
Uh-huh.
making the Loom video. I host challenges. I still love live free challenges. I'm old school like that, you know? And one of the things I'll do is if we see someone super engaged in the challenge in opening emails, I will send them a private Loom video, say their name, and talk about the offer and see if they have any questions. It takes me a minute. I mean, yours probably took longer because you were going to their website, but like that's extra step
Yeah.
I think is so important. And I think sometimes when we think about email marketing, passive funnels and things like that, we're like, oh, it's passive. I don't have to worry about it. But like, we need to ask for the engagement and also, like you said, integrate storytelling, integrate these things in there. Otherwise, people are just like blindly just like reading your copy and it's not like hitting home.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And back to the engagement thing, I think I'd sent a few emails where I was like, why does it feel like crickets in here? Why does it feel like I'm talking to myself? And I'm like, is anyone listening? And then people were listening, but hey, it's cool to be able to go that extra mile. And I think that is memorable. It's not something I'm going to do every week, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely memorable for people. And they go, oh, you really care. And also for me, it wasn't completely random. I said, I don't have a launch coming up, but I did put in, hey, I actually looked at them. I put down all these people like as leads. And I was like, I know you have this offer. This could be a good fit. It's like a PS. It wasn't this crazy big
Mhm.
pitch. It was more like, I know you've got my 52 email templates. If you're interested in my membership, this is where I offer this kind of support. So it was also this preview of how I can support them. And I've had some questions and some back and forth about that too. I need to look more into the data, but it can't hurt every now and then to go the extra mile.
Right. Go the extra mile. Be a little bit more personal.
Yes.
Cause like you were saying, even with copywriting and all of that, there's just so much
Yep.
generic BS on the internet. We've been around since 2016, so we've seen the rise and fall and all of the in between. But there is so much generic that
Yes.
it really is that personal copy, that using your authentic voice, speaking how you normally would. All the tips that you shared, really will help you stand out
Yep.
with your content, with your copy, with your landing pages, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. Ooh, yay! I think these are some amazing tips that you gave our listeners. And especially, again, my big takeaway from our chat is definitely like you're not going to be a good copywriter out of the gate.
Hmm.
It comes with the process. And the more that you do it, the better you will ultimately be. Just like you said, the more drafts that you write, the better the final copy ultimately is.
Yes. Stick to it. You can do it.
You could do it. Is there anything else that you would like to share as we're looking ahead into 2025 and thinking about, how the industry is shifting from a copywriting perspective?
Oh, yeah. I think one thing that is becoming more and more important, something that I am becoming really aware of, is that, like, how do you differentiate yourself from others with, say, whether it is like services or digital products, and how do you communicate that to your audience? It's something I'm reflecting on as I am going through a process of like looking through my funnels, looking through my digital products, and you see other stuff out there on the market, and that's fine, but also like what makes yours different. I could say, for example, I have a low ticket offer, 52 email newsletter templates. Now I see stuff out there like that all the time. Well, not quite like that, but similar sort of email templates, right? And it's like, why should someone buy from me when they're getting ads about something, from someone else? And if I'm asking myself these questions, I'm like, I actually created this in 2017. I didn't create it in the age of AI, even though I have used AI to flesh some of it out. I have a copywriting background. I'm basing this based off like copywriting principles or conversion principles or, things that I have
Mhm.
learned. So that's just an example of how I'm thinking when I am talking about my offers, maybe in ad copy, maybe on the sales page. I'm just trying to think for my different offers, why should someone choose to purchase from me? I think that's becoming more and more important this year. There is of course, a lot of noise, but there's space for everyone. But if you want your stuff to
Mhm.
stand out, also thinking about how you can communicate your unique point of difference is really important.
I like that. That's fantastic. And also, like, we had talked about a lot here on the podcast is like the authority, like dripping in that
Yep.
authority. Like you said, you've been doing this
Yes.
a long time. This is the formula that you work. Like, these are all storytelling principles that I love
Yeah.
nerding out about when it comes to copywriting. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. If someone wants to take the next step and connect with you, and we have that free email template download, which everyone should do, especially if copywriting is a struggle for you, because it'll give you a launch point. But where else can people find you on the internet?
Absolutely. Yes. Go and grab that email template, and you'll also then be able to sort of see different aspects of my funnel in works as well, which is interesting. You can find me, so website connectioncopy.co. It's not .com, it's .co. The best place to connect properly is probably Instagram at connectioncopyco. You can follow me there. I've got tons of like resources that I share on my posts anyway. But shoot me a message if you listen to this. If you have a question for me, I genuinely will do my best to try and answer you. Otherwise, you're welcome to send me an email too, which is just hello@connectioncopy.co. I would love to connect and answer any questions you have.
I love that. Thank you again so much for taking the time to join us today. And I will talk to you really, really soon.
Thanks, Michelle.